Okay, now stitching with my needle down so that my needle doesn't move as I get started. I'm holding my threads and I'm just going to back stitch here at the beginning and the end. I'm using a 5/8 inch seam allowance as I am sewing down just to my dot on the side of our pajama pants. So I'll take out that seam pin as I go, and before I reach my dot, I'm going to take it out, sew down to the dot, and back stitch at that point. Then I'm just going to flip my threads, and I'll come back and flip the other one, and I'm going to move down to where my other dot is marked. And I'm going to back stitch here, and now it's a little bit harder to see my 5/8 mark, but my 5/8 is marked by the dot that I marked, and also here on the machine I can see 5/8. I've got it lined up so I can keep a gauge of how far my presser foot is away, and I'll just keep that at 5/8. You can see I came out at 5/8 still. We'll go all the way down to the end and back stitch at the end. Okay, now I didn't sew in between these two marks, and if you open it up, you can see on the side that's where my pocket is going to be. But I want to sew around my pocket, so I didn't show pinning it, but you want to pin around the pocket, hold those sides together, and sew around the pocket edge. You don't have to sew across this top part, but you're going to sew around the pocket edge now with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And if your pieces were not exactly the same, you're going to stay 5/8 of an inch in from your smaller side. But if it's a big discrepancy, you can talk to me and we'll make sure that we work it out. Okay, you have to go a little bit slower around the curve just to keep it nice and straight. And now I am actually going to keep going with a 5/8 inch seam allowance until I get to where I sewed my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance going down. So I'm going to come all the way to this point, keeping it about 5/8 of an inch, and then I'll back stitch. When I get to the part where my seam is going towards the foot, really keep your fingers pressing down on it so it doesn't move as you're sewing across it. And when I get to my seam, I'll back stitch my stitch line on that seam. Okay, if you can tell, I came around and ended right where my seam line is going down the leg.